The man who steps out of the black sedan is older than Luke by nearly 15 years, broad-shouldered but softened by time. His gray suit pressed neatly despite the early hour, his hair more silver than brown now. His name is Colonel Andrew Mercer, retired United States Marine Corps, and even before he closes the car door, Shadow recognizes the scent beneath the cologne and starch, the faint trace of the same mountain cabin where Luke once spent his summers as a boy. Andrew stands still for a moment, taking in the quiet sweep of white stones, the breeze lifting the edge of his jacket, and then his eyes fall on the dog. They hold there, steady and unblinking. He does not call Shadow's name right away. Instead, he walks the remaining 20 yards across the damp grass, shoes darkening with moisture, until he stands beside the headstone bearing his son's name. The carved letters catch the sunlight now, each one sharp and deliberate, as if permanence could soften absence. Andrew removes his hat slowly, pressing it against his chest. He does not cry. Marines of his generation rarely do in public. But his breathing shifts, deeper, measured. Shadow finally turns his head, just enough to study the older man's face. There is recognition there, and something like assessment. Andrew lowers himself carefully to one knee, the fabric of his trousers brushing the cool ground. "Morning, son," he says quietly, voice steady but rough at the edges. Then, after a pause, he adds, "And morning to you too, Shadow." The dog's ears flick at the sound of his name. For a brief second, his tail moves once against the grass, not in excitement, but in acknowledgement. Andrew reaches out, not to grab, not to command, but to rest his hand gently against the thick fur at Shadow's neck. The dog does not lean in. He does not pull away. He remains facing the grave, posture tall, chest lifted, as if both men are standing inspection together. Andrew exhales slowly. "You are still on watch," he murmurs, more to himself than to the dog. The wind shifts again, carrying the distant hum of traffic from Memorial Bridge and the faint metallic rhythm of a flagpole somewhere beyond the rows. Andrew studies the earth around the headstone. It is slightly disturbed near the base, not damaged, just turned over in small, deliberate patches. He notices it because he was once trained to notice everything. Shadow's nose lowers briefly toward the ground, then lifts again toward the tree line beyond the cemetery wall. Andrew follows the movement with his eyes, but sees nothing unusual, only the soft outline of oaks and the pale blue of a Virginia morning. Still, he feels it, a quiet tension in the dog's body, a readiness that does not match simple mourning. "What are you waiting for?" Andrew asks under his breath. Shadow does not answer, of course, but his posture shifts almost imperceptibly, weight redistributing across his paws as if bracing for something unseen. Andrew presses his palm against the cold marble, fingertips tracing Luke's name. "They told me it was over," he says softly. "They said the report was final." The words hang in the air, unfinished. Shadow's gaze remains locked on the stone, but his breathing deepens, slow and controlled, the way Luke once taught him during long nights overseas when silence meant survival. And for the first time since arriving, Andrew begins to understand that the dog is not simply grieving. He is waiting. Andrew remains kneeling long after the breeze settles, his hand resting against the marble as if he can feel warmth through stone, and beside him Shadow does not move except for the slow rise and fall of his chest, steady as a metronome. A grounds crew truck hums faintly in the distance, the sound muted by the gentle slope of the hills, and somewhere beyond the trees a church bell marks the hour. 8 slow chimes that roll across the cemetery like a quiet reminder that the world continues whether grief is ready or not. Andrew studies the disturbed patches of earth again, small arcs of turned soil near the base of the headstone, no deeper than a few inches, deliberate and precise. This is not random digging. It is measured, intentional. He shifts closer, lowering himself fully to the grass despite the dampness seeping into his suit. Shadow's ears tilt back briefly, then forward again, tracking the older man's movement but never losing sight of the grave. "You found something, did you not?" Andrew asks softly. The dog's head dips once toward the ground, nose brushing the soil, then lifts toward Andrew's face. It is not a trick. It is not a performance. It is communication. Andrew exhales. Through his nose, a quiet sound that carries more weight than words. He glances around, noting the respectful distance of other visitors, The slow movement of a young couple walking hand in hand several rows away, the shimmer of small American flags planted at intervals along the path. No one is watching closely. Carefully, Andrew presses his fingers into the loosened earth where Shadow has been digging. The soil is soft from recent rain, cool and dark beneath the surface. His fingertips strike something solid, not stone, not root, something smoother. He pauses, heart tightening in his chest, then gently clears away more dirt until the edge of a small waterproof case becomes visible, no larger than 6 inches long, matte black and scuffed along one corner. Shadow steps closer now, standing directly over Andrew's shoulder, breath warm against the back of his neck. Andrew freezes for a moment, the weight of possibility settling around him like a second uniform. He had been told that everything belonging to Luke was accounted for, cataloged, returned, folded into neat boxes, and handed over with formal condolences. There had been no mention of anything buried, nothing hidden. He looks at the headstone again, at the dates etched beneath Luke's name, and for the first time since the funeral, he feels something other than finality. He feels tension, purpose. Andrew lifts the small case from the ground, brushing dirt from its surface with the edge of his sleeve. It is sealed tight, designed to withstand water and pressure, the kind of thing a Marine might carry into uncertain terrain. Shadow's tail moves once more, a controlled, deliberate motion, not excitement, but confirmation. Andrew meets the dog's amber gaze. "You have been guarding this," he says quietly, the realization settling deep in his voice. Around them the cemetery remains serene, white stones glowing under the widening sky. But within that stillness, a different kind of watch has been unfolding for 127 days. Shadow lowers himself beside the grave again, posture firm, eyes no longer scanning the horizon, but fixed now on the case in Andrew's hands, as if the mission that began overseas did not end with a folded flag, but continued here, beneath 6 inches of Virginia soil, waiting for the right pair of hands to finally understand. Andrew does not open the case at the gravesite. Not yet. He presses the latch with his thumb, testing the seal, then stops himself, glancing around at the rows of white markers standing in silent witness. This place is sacred ground. Whatever Luke intended to leave behind deserves more than hurried curiosity under an open sky. He slips the case carefully into the inside pocket of his suit jacket, the weight subtle but undeniable against his chest, and rises slowly to his feet. Shadow stands at once, mirroring the movement without command. The morning sun has climbed higher now, warming the damp grass, casting longer shadows behind the stones. Andrew places his palm once more against the marble. "I will see this through," he says quietly, not as a promise born of emotion, but as a statement of duty. Shadow watches him, head slightly tilted, as if measuring the resolve in his voice. When Andrew steps back toward the paved path, the dog hesitates for the first time in 127 days. His gaze returns to the grave, lingering there, amber eyes tracing the carved letters. The breeze moves lightly through his fur. For a long second, he remains still, and Andrew waits. He does not tug on a leash. He does not call out. Finally, Shadow turns and walks beside him, not ahead, not behind, but level with his knee, posture straight, steps deliberate. It is not abandonment. It is transition. The black sedan hums softly when Andrew starts the engine. As they pull away from Section 60, the cemetery recedes in the rearview mirror, rows of marble blending into a pale horizon. Shadow sits upright in the passenger seat, eyes forward, ears alert, as if the mission has shifted location but not importance. The drive across the Potomac is quiet. Morning commuters fill the lanes, brake lights blinking red in orderly rhythm. Andrew's hands remain steady on the steering wheel, though his mind moves rapidly through memories of briefings, after-action reports, conversations that ended too abruptly. He had accepted the official version because that is what fathers of Marines are taught to do. You trust the system. You honor the sacrifice. You do not question the outcome. But the presence of a sealed case buried beneath 6 inches of soil changes something fundamental. At a red light near Rosslyn, Andrew finally speaks. "What did you know?" he asks softly, eyes fixed on the traffic ahead. Shadow's ears flick toward him, but his gaze remains forward, unwavering. The light turns green. They continue. By the time they reach Andrew's townhouse in Alexandria, The sun is fully risen, warming the brick facades along the quiet street. He parks in the driveway and cuts the engine. For a moment, neither man nor dog moves. Then Andrew reaches into his jacket and withdraws the case, turning it over in his hands. Dirt flakes onto his lap. The seal is intact, unbroken. Shadow steps down from the car and stands beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touch. The dog's breathing is slow but intent, his body angled slightly toward the front door as if urging movement without impatience. Andrew nods once, more to himself than to the animal. "All right," he murmurs. "We will find out together." And for the first time since the funeral, the air between them carries not just grief, but purpose. Inside the townhouse, the air is still and faintly scented with old leather and coffee grounds, a quiet bachelor's order that has not changed much in years. Andrew sets the small waterproof case on the oak dining table beneath a hanging light that casts a warm circle across its scuffed surface. Shadow stands close, paws planted firmly on the hardwood floor, amber eyes fixed on the object as though it might move on its own. Outside, a delivery truck rolls past, its low rumble fading down the street. But inside the room there is only the soft tick of a wall clock and the steady sound of Andrew's breathing. He removes his jacket carefully, folds it over the back of a chair, and sits down without breaking eye contact with the case. His fingers rest on the latches for a long moment. He has opened classified briefings in rooms far more tense than this, but those were professional. This is personal. Shadow shifts slightly, claws clicking once against the wood, then settles again, body angled toward Andrew, as if prepared to witness whatever comes next. Andrew exhales and presses both latches at once. The seal breaks with a muted snap, not dramatic, just final. He lifts the lid slowly. Inside rests a slim flash drive wrapped in clear plastic, a folded sheet of waterproof paper, and a second set of dog tags, identical in shape to the ones Luke wore, except for one detail. Andrew reaches. First for the tags. They are cool and slightly heavier than he expects. The top tag bears Luke's name, rank, and blood type. The second tag beneath it carries a different engraving. Shadow, United States Military Working Dog. Andrew's throat tightens. Luke had never spoken about formal paperwork that would list a dog as family, yet here is proof that in his own way he had already made that declaration. Shadow steps forward and lowers his head, nose brushing the metal lightly, a soft breath fogging its surface. There is no whining, no dramatic display, just recognition. Andrew sets the tags gently on the table and unfolds the waterproof sheet. The handwriting is unmistakably Luke's, bold and controlled. It is brief. If you are reading this, it means Shadow did his job. Trust him. There is more on the drive. Do not let it be dismissed as routine. Andrew reads the lines twice, then a third time, the weight of the words settling into his chest. Not routine. The official report had used that word more than once. He looks at the flash drive now, small and ordinary in appearance, yet suddenly immense in implication. Shadow's ears are forward, posture rigid but calm, as though he understands that the waiting phase has ended and the next step requires human hands. Andrew rises and walks toward his study, each step measured, the wooden floor creaking softly under his weight. He inserts the flash drive into his laptop, the screen illuminating his face in pale light. For a fraction of a second, he hesitates. Then he clicks to open the file. Behind him, Shadow remains seated at the doorway, guarding not a grave this time, but the truth waiting to be heard. The screen flickers once before the video begins, grainy at first, as if recorded in haste, the image steadying to reveal Luke seated inside a dim command tent, desert light filtering through canvas walls behind him. He looks tired but composed, uniform neat, eyes focused directly into the camera. Andrew leans closer to the laptop, one hand braced against the desk, breath shallow without realizing it. Shadow remains at the doorway, ears forward, body still as carved stone. Luke clears his throat softly on the recording. If this file is being watched outside of official review, then something did not sit right, he says, voice calm, measured, the cadence of a man trained to remain steady under pressure. There is no panic in his tone, only certainty. The video shifts slightly as he adjusts the camera angle. Shadow alerted 3 separate times during our last rotation. Luke continues. Each time, The area was marked clear by standard scan. Each time, he refused to stand down. Andrew feels a tightening in his chest. He remembers the report stating that conditions were routine, that all protocols had been followed. Luke glances briefly off camera, then back again. He does not give false signals. Not in 6 years. There is a faint metallic hum in the background, perhaps equipment running nearby, but Luke's face remains the center of the frame. If anything happens that is labeled accidental or environmental without full review, trust the dog. Andrew's jaw tightens at the phrase. Trust the dog. The words echo the note found in the case. Luke's expression softens slightly then, a brief shift that feels almost personal. Dad, if you are the one seeing this, I need you to understand something, he says quietly. Andrew's hand trembles for the first time. Luke continues. Shadow reacts to patterns before we see them. He memorizes scent, movement, even hesitation. There were discrepancies in supply routing the week before we rotated out. Minor on paper, not minor in practice. The video pauses momentarily as if buffering, then resumes. Luke reaches forward and holds up a small folded document toward the camera. The image is not clear enough to read, but the gesture is deliberate. Copies are encrypted on this drive, he explains. Log deviations, route changes, clearance overrides. He lowers the paper. If this reaches you, it means I did not get the chance to submit it through proper channels. Andrew swallows hard, eyes burning but dry. The official report had cited weather complications and mechanical miscommunication. Routine. Luke's gaze shifts again, softer now, almost reflective. Shadow will not leave what he knows is unfinished, he says. He will stay until someone listens. The recording ends abruptly, the screen returning to a still image of Luke's last frame, eyes steady, expression resolute. The room is silent except for the faint whir of the laptop fan. Andrew slowly sinks into the chair, the weight of revelation pressing down on him like a second gravity. At the doorway, Shadow steps forward quietly, crossing the room until he stands beside Andrew's knee. The dog does not look at the screen. He looks at Andrew, waiting, as if asking the only question that matters now. Will you finish it? Andrew does not speak for a long time after the screen goes dark. The final frame of Luke's face remains reflected faintly on the laptop display, superimposed over the older man's own features, as if father and son share the same outline for a breath longer than time allows. Shadow rests his head lightly against Andrew's knee, not pressing, not demanding, just present. The quiet in the study feels heavier now, charged with purpose rather than sorrow. Andrew reaches forward and replays the final 30 seconds of the recording, listening again to the calm certainty in Luke's voice, the deliberate way he says the words not minor in practice. It is not the tone of a man speculating. It is the tone of a Marine documenting. Andrew straightens slowly in his chair, the years of command settling back into his posture like muscle memory. Grief had bent him. Duty realigns him. He removes the flash drive carefully and places it on the desk beside the second set of dog tags, then reaches for his phone. His thumb hovers over the contact labeled Inspector General Liaison, a number he has not dialed in over a decade. He does not hesitate long. The call connects after 2 rings. His voice is steady when he speaks. This is Colonel Andrew Mercer, retired. I need to submit supplemental material regarding a finalized field report. It concerns Captain Luke Mercer. There is a pause on the other end, procedural at first, then attentive as Andrew continues, measured and precise, outlining the existence of encrypted files and recorded testimony. He does not accuse. He does not speculate. He states facts. Across the room, Shadow lifts his head at the change in tone, ears forward, as if recognizing the shift from mourning to action. When the call ends, Andrew exhales slowly and sets the phone down. He kneels in front of Shadow then, meeting the dog's amber gaze at eye level. You stayed because you knew, he says quietly. The dog's tail moves once against the rug, not wagging wildly, just acknowledgement. Andrew studies the animal's face, the faint scar near the left ear, the intelligent stillness in his eyes. He trusted you, Andrew adds, voice softer now. And now, I will. Outside, late afternoon light filters through the blinds, casting narrow bands of gold across the study walls. The clock reads 3:47. Only a few hours have passed since they left the cemetery, yet the air feels entirely different. Not lighter. Clearer. Andrew rises and walks to the window, looking out at the quiet street where neighbors move about their ordinary lives. Somewhere in a nearby yard, a child laughs. The sound carries faintly, normal and unaware of the weight inside this house. Behind him, shadow settles onto the floor, not in exhaustion, but in watchfulness that has finally found direction. He is no longer guarding a secret beneath soil. He is guarding a truth now set in motion. Andrew turns back toward the desk, eyes resting once more on the dog tags engraved with Shadow's name. He picks them up and closes his fist around the cool metal. "We are not finished," he says softly, not to the empty room, but to the memory of a son who believed that loyalty could outlast silence. Shadow rises at once, stepping to Andrew's side, posture tall, ready. And for the first time since that October morning at the gravesite, the waiting is over. 3 days later, the townhouse feels less like a place of mourning and more like a command post. Andrew sits at the same oak table, files neatly stacked, laptop open, a legal pad filled with careful notes in his precise handwriting. Sunlight pours through the kitchen window, bright and unapologetic, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily in the air. Shadow lies near the doorway, head resting on his paws, but his eyes are open, tracking every shift in Andrew's posture, every vibration from the phone on the table. The response from the Inspector General's office came faster than Andrew expected. An internal review has been initiated. The encrypted files were authenticated. The route deviations Luke documented were confirmed. Nothing explosive, nothing dramatic, just a series of small irregularities that should have triggered a deeper look. Andrew reads the official email again, the language measured and careful, acknowledging that the initial field report will be re-examined. He closes his eyes briefly, not in triumph, but in relief. This is not about scandal. It is about accuracy, about honor. A quiet knock sounds at the front door. Shadow rises instantly, not barking, but standing tall, ears forward. Posture protective without aggression. Andrew walks to the door and opens it to find a uniformed Marine captain standing on the porch, cap tucked under his arm, expression respectful. "Colonel Mercer," the young officer says, voice steady. "I was asked to deliver this personally." He hands over a sealed envelope bearing official insignia. Andrew thanks him with a nod, the kind that passes understanding without ceremony. After the door closes, he returns to the table and breaks the seal. Inside is a formal letter stating that Captain Luke Mercer's record will be amended to reflect additional findings, and that a commendation for exceptional diligence in the field is being recommended posthumously. Andrew reads the words slowly, absorbing their weight. Across the room, Shadow steps closer, watching the older man's face as if reading it the way he once read Luke's. Andrew kneels beside the dog and rests his hand against the thick fur at his neck. "You stayed because it mattered," he says quietly. "You stayed because he asked you to." Shadow's tail moves once against the floor, soft and controlled. Later that afternoon, they return to the cemetery. The sky is clear, a wide stretch of blue over the rolling hills. Andrew carries the envelope carefully, along with the engraved dog tags bearing Shadow's name. At the grave, he kneels and places the tags gently against the base of the headstone, the metal catching the sunlight. "Your watch is honored," he murmurs. Shadow steps forward, standing beside the stone, but this time his posture is different. He does not scan the horizon. He does not tense at passing footsteps. He lowers himself slowly onto the grass and rests his chin near the marble, not in vigilance, but in peace. The breeze moves lightly through the trees, carrying the faint rustle of flags and distant conversation. Andrew stands behind him, hand resting on the dog's back, and for the first time since that October morning, there is no sense of something unfinished in the air. There is only completion. And in the quiet of Arlington, beneath the steady sky, a soldier's truth has been heard because a dog refused to forget. Autumn settles gently over Arlington in the weeks that follow, the air turning crisp at 55 degrees in the early mornings, leaves drifting down in slow spirals across the marble rows. Andrew returns often, not out of urgency, now, but out of reverence. Shadow walks beside him without leash tension, nails clicking softly against the paved paths, his stride steady and unhurried. The headstone stands unchanged, white against the gold and amber of the season, yet something in the atmosphere feels lighter, as though a quiet weight has been lifted from the ground itself. The amended record has been finalized. A new commendation has been added to Luke's file, recognizing his diligence and integrity. There was no public spectacle, no headlines, no dramatic ceremony. Just corrected lines in an official archive and a letter bearing the seal of acknowledgement. For Andrew, that is enough. On this particular morning, he carries a small wooden box tucked beneath his arm. Shadow notices it immediately, but does not rush ahead. When they reach the grave, Andrew kneels carefully, placing the box at the base of the stone. Inside rests the second set of dog tags and a folded copy of the commendation letter, laminated against weather and time. He does not bury them. He sets them gently within the box and leaves the lid slightly open, as if allowing sunlight to touch the metal. "Your name stands clean," he says softly, voice steady in the cool air. Shadow lowers himself beside the grave, but this time he does not assume the rigid posture of a sentinel. He stretches out fully, front paws extended, chin resting lightly between them. His amber eyes close halfway, not in fatigue, but in calm. A breeze moves through the oaks overhead, carrying the faint rustle of distant flags and the low murmur of visitors walking among the stones. Andrew remains there for several minutes, hand resting on Shadow's broad back, feeling the slow rhythm of his breathing. He thinks of Luke's last recorded words, of trust placed not only in a system, but in a living creature who could sense what others overlooked. He thinks of the months Shadow sat in silent vigil, guarding not just a memory, but a responsibility. When Andrew finally stands, he does not call the dog immediately. He takes a few steps back and waits. Shadow lifts his head, glances once at the engraved name on the stone, then rises smoothly to his feet. He does not hesitate. He does not look back twice. He walks to Andrew's side, posture tall, eyes forward. As they move away along the winding path, the white headstone remains behind them, quiet and unchanging beneath the wide Virginia sky. Shadow no longer needs to hold watch over what has been heard. The mission he guarded beneath 6 inches of soil has been carried into daylight. And in the soft light of an American autumn morning, a father and a dog walk side by side, not away from a grave, but toward the steady work of living with honor and tact.